All right, so I see you've got a painting of Julian Assange in the background.
I do. My friend, you can find her on Twitter actually, at artsy_Marxist, I think. And she does amazing paintings of, I mean, you can commission her for just about anything. She's really talented. Like you can't even, it's so much better than I've like tried taking pictures of it, and it just doesn't do it justice. It's really good.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So she's cool. I mean, I wish everybody would buy her stuff.
Yeah, I have to admire your home office layout. I have to use a green screen to hide the fact that I've got nothing but
Well,
like.
I kind of hate actually that there's a bookcase behind me because that's so cliche. Like everybody does the bookcase, but this is just my off. Like this is just the way that it's set. Like I don't, it's a built-in. I don't have a whole lot of options in this room.
Yeah,
Um, but it's still so cliche, but whatever.
yeah.
It is what it
Well, I
is.
found a nice. If you search YouTube, if you get yourself like a decent green screen and search YouTube for like video loops of like news backgrounds, that's where I found this. And in fact, I can probably send you some of the stuff that I downloaded.
Yeah, Steve's got a green screen. I think Lori's got a green screen. Nico's got a green screen. Combo Couch has a green screen. I should probably get one. I'm just kind
I like
of
this one
lazy
because
about
it
all this
fits the color
stuff.
scheme on my banner. So,
Yeah, good branding. I don't, yeah, good branding. Okay, so where do you want to start?
all right, so just to get it out of the way and kind of fully exercise the last vestiges out of my system, Chunk Yogurt went on an epic tirade, and not only on his show but also on Twitter with regards to Glenn Greenwald weighing in on the epic war between TYT and Jimmy Dore, because it started out with a smear against Aaron Mate, and then ballooned because Jimmy Dore got involved because that's Jimmy, and a lot of people are like trying to blow it off as drama, but the fact of the matter is
It's not
TYT is a
drama.
corporate funded right-wing propaganda outlet with very powerful backers, both in political circles and media circles, and when they smear someone, there's very little pushback, if any at all, from the mainstream press. And so it's really important to fight back against this stuff and really hammer home the facts of the case. And the facts of the case are, TYT overstepped their bounds. They lied about Aaron Mate parroting right-wing intelligence agency talking points, with regards to Russia and Syria. And this is in an effort to prevent the revelation of the OPCW scandal from getting out to a
Well,
wide.
and that's why it's more nefarious than even just them. I mean, they're doing this for a reason. They're not dumb. And so it's really, all of it is just really obvious to me. TYT has been a problem for a long time now. I retweeted myself the other day because in April of last year of 2020, I tweeted Cenk Uygur is a danger to the left, period, end of story. And I took a lot of shit for that, but that was accurate. Cenk Uygur is a danger to the left. Like he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows who he took money from, and he knows the conversations that were had about what that meant and what kind of coverage they needed to do. And he's not a dumb guy. I mean, I know he plays one on TV, but he's like a shrewd businessman. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And so he knows what he's doing, and he knows that what he's doing is wrong on so many levels. I
No,
mean,
they all do. I mean,
yeah.
all. See, I keep getting these people on social media and YouTube, trying to give right wingers the benefit of the doubt, and suggesting that they actually believe what they're saying. No, they don't. Want to know how I know? Because they lie. Okay, when
Well,
you lie,
wait. Are you saying all right wingers? Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah. What?
No,
Yeah, when
no.
people lie, okay, and especially people in media, the definition of a lie is to present information that is a false, exaggerated, or untrue, with the specific intention to deceive. So these people are deliberately lying. They know they're lying, and therefore there's the intention to deceive.
Wait, but I'm asking, so you're saying everybody who's right wing is a liar? Is that
Uh,
what I'm?
I think pretty much everyone in right-wing media, yeah.
Like
Like,
mainstream media?
yeah, for like, for example, Ben
Well,
Shapiro, you
yeah.
get,
Oh, of course. He's
people
like the
like,
he's
people
so
like,
disingenuous.
Cenk,
Yeah.
Cenk and Anna,
Yeah.
uh, you know, pretty much everyone on Fox Noise Channel, Clinton Noise Network, MSDNC, they all deliberately, consciously
They
lie.
play a role. Yeah, of
And these are
course.
not,
Well, okay, no, actually,
to,
I don't even actually agree with that, because I think some of these people are genuinely just like useful idiots. They're just dumb. They're career climbers. They just do as they're told. They don't really question it. They don't have that
yeah, well,
deep of thinking.
I would believe that if I didn't know that the CIA and NSA and other intelligence agencies weren't so proliferated through mainstream
Well,
media,
yeah, of course.
because these people are in the business of deliberately crafting deception in order to, propagandize the American public, and the people who are in the media who disseminate this, they know it's false. I mean, I don't know if you watched Dylan Radigan's channel. I mean, Jimmy Dore has also gone into it where, these people were caught basically admitting they know that Russiagate was bullshit from the beginning, but they parroted it because it brought in the ratings. Because before Trump came along, their ratings were plummeting downward.
Well, and look at how reliant they still are on that. Like they're still
Yeah,
talking about Trump. He hasn't been president for like 7 months now, and they're still
well,
talking
six
about
months,
him
yeah,
daily.
but
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
just, oh, it's enough. And I get that, that everybody's worried that he's going to run again, but it's all just I call it's a soap opera with psychopaths.
yeah.
It's kind of a reality TV show. They're entertaining you while they, kill you. And it's really bizarre.
Got my glasses off because I'm getting the glare from the light off of my glasses. So, uh, but yeah, it gets to a point where, I just, and maybe it's just because I'm, in my late 40s, and I've been involved in politics long enough to kind of recognize when people are being genuine and when they're bullshitting. Take Kyle Kulinski, for example, in his recent blow up on social media. I think, he's a type of sniveling little coward who avoids confrontation when he can help it. He was probably getting pressured by TYT to join in on smearing Jimmy Dore. He didn't want to do it, so he picked the weakest attack that he figured he could get away with, and use as an excuse to try and distance himself from everyone, so he wouldn't have to actually confront anyone head on. But then Jimmy was like, and Kyle's actually right. Jimmy's only got one reaction to attacks on him, and that is nuclear, but that's by necessity. So Kyle had to have known when he decided to issue that little smear calling him a slut shamer that Jimmy would respond the way he typically does, and he got his big time.
Well, and the fact that Kyle completely omitted the fact that Jimmy was being blackmailed was something to behold. I don't know how you tell that story to your audience and not mention the fact that Anna Kasparian very clearly sent Jimmy a direct message, essentially just saying, hey, we're tired of you running your mouth. And do you remember all those times that, or all those times that you were inappropriate with me at work, and you even wrote a card? The way that she weaponized this
Yeah,
thing from 7 years ago, especially given the hypocrisy of all of these old videos that have, popped up about them, the fact that Kyle's defending that, and then omitting this whole blackmail
yeah,
aspect is,
and one thing that really bothered me, and I seem to be the only one who brought it up. I could be wrong. So if someone has said this, I'll be happy to retract what I said. But I think I'm the only one who's actually mentioned how Kyle used that deceptively edited video from Max Blumenthal reacting to Jimmy relating that incident, to omit the part where Max is really kind of using that to segue into, okay, this is just a desperate attempt by someone who got caught doing something she knew she shouldn't have, and is now trying to salvage what credibility she has left. So, they basically use Bellingcat methods to try and smear Jimmy Dore. And it's like, oh my God, Kyle, what the hell were you thinking? Now he did apologize somewhat, but then he was kind of like bullshitting
not
in his
really.
apology for ghosting Jimmy in order to have Hassan Piker on so they could have their chuckles at Jimmy's expense. So I'm like, Kyle, what? I mean, I honestly don't think that Kyle is necessarily a bad guy, but there are some things that he just is a rank coward about, and he needs to man up and admit what he did wrong.
I think he makes a lot of mental justifications for the things that he's doing too.
Yeah.
I think that I mean, he's always been like kind of a milquetoast centrist, in a lot of ways. He's not very revolutionary. He's not very, he's like a kind of a, I don't know. So he's okay on like policy stuff and whatever, but I mean, I don't know. Like he's really, I guess when he like in 2015, 2016, I kind of watched him some, but I've never really been a fan of his.
Yeah, and especially,
He really has
yeah,
really exposed
especially with
himself.
regards to third party efforts. He was going off on oh God, what's his name? I'm trying to remember, and my brain is misfiring. The guy who's been trying to uh start movement for a People's Party.
Oh, Nick Brana.
Yeah, Nick Brana. Yeah, that's the name. I knew
Yeah.
I knew it was a Nick. I just wasn't sure the last name. But the the disingenuous argument he says, where I don't think you're going to succeed in starting a third party because you haven't succeeded yet. But he kind of leaves out, well, you try. The left has been trying for over 50 years to try and move the Democrats back to the left, back to their New Deal politics, and especially within the last 20 years since the 2000 stolen election, they've been just apeshit about not letting themselves be taken over under any circumstances by the left. I mean, if you remember Daily Kos, which is this very far right Democrat gatekeeper blog, funded by the Clinton brigade and their sycophants, their entire reason for existing is to prevent a left takeover of the Democrat Party under any circumstances. And if they can't prevent an upstart from getting elected, they will very quickly, as we saw with the fraud squad, co-opt them, usurp them, and get them to sell out without them realizing that they're selling out.
Oh, I
Well, at
think
this
they
point, I think they
realize.
realize that they've sold out. But
They realize.
so
They absolutely realize. But I mean, to be honest with you, I agree that a third party is almost 100% going to fail. I think electoral politics is not the
right,
system
well,
is
it's
corrupt to
one
its core.
component in a larger arsenal. I mean, if you look at France, for example, where people are still willing to take to the streets and shut shit down till they get what they want, and more often than not, they tend to get what they want, and the government backs off. Last year, what was the start of something, and then of course on January 6th, which nobody in mainstream media can seem to shut the fuck up about.
So stupid.
It's not an insurrection.
No.
Especially when the Capitol Hill cops let them in.
Right.
It's not an insurrection.
Listen, I think, okay, so I was there just a few days before that for the Assange extradition hearing, the ruling, and I left that morning. So, but when we were at our, we had a force the vote protest and Assange protests, all in the same, I think it was a weekend. And there was like 50 cops for like, I don't know, maybe like 40 of us. You know what I mean? Like cops everywhere. And then all of a sudden, and everybody knew that this was coming. I mean, everybody was talking about it in DC in the days leading up to it. Everybody was like, oh, did you hear that there's going to be this Trump rally on the 6th and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't a secret. And so the fact that there was, less than adequate, or I mean, whatever, depending on your viewpoint of, how much cops you need there, because 0 would be fine. But yeah, it's so ridiculous. This is all just so ridiculous.
Yeah, well, if you remember the French Revolution, but also the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, the nobility are very scared whenever the peasants get uppity and start, acting like they're going to pose a real threat. I mean, those two incidents I mentioned, the French Revolution and the Peasants' Revolt in England, really kind of showed, just how far the nobility can go in terms of pissing off the public. And they are frightened that the next revolution will pretty much end them permanently. And so they've had this pathological terror ever since. And so, the January 6th thing, they got as far as actually being able to get into the Capitol building. And, so they hightailed it out of there. And of course, Ocasio-Cortez is lying her rear end off because it turns out she wasn't even really there. So, but the elites tend to go apeshit whenever they feel that there's a serious threat that they might actually come to harm, And so you see the Biden regime, putting in all these
Well,
draconian
and I
threats.
mean, this whole January 6th thing and the hype around it is also partially so that they can ramp up those kinds of policy. I mean, we're going to get, Patriot Act 2.0.
Right.
We have
And
Joe
Biden
Biden,
wrote,
the
right, and
Department of
Biden wrote
Homeland
Patriot
Security
Act
putting out the
1.0. So
the DVEs, you know what I mean? Like we're all going to be DVEs, and literally it's like the most general categories. And then if you don't fit into the one of the categories that they've decided to like kind of name, there's like the other category where it's like, if we didn't already mention you, here's where you can also be a DVE. And
yeah,
it's, you
so
know,
so if you oppose capitalism, you're an extremist. Never mind that capitalism is itself quite extreme. But if you are against the government, you're considered extreme. But a lot of this really is to attack and suppress the left. They're not so worried about the extreme right wing, as represented by Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, Ben Shapiro, and the like, because they know that any uprisings will only be for show and not really pose a genuine threat, because these guys are sheep herders and their job is to have the sheep in position so that they can frighten Democrats into go along with Republicans, but that's about the extent of the threat that right wingers pose.
when I think most people in power are far like extreme right. I think
Yeah.
that's so they're fine with that. I mean, I think that they worry about the like the anti-authoritarian far right, like the ones who all, you know what I mean? Like there's this group out there that that kind of thing. But I think that I mean just look at it. Joe Biden is like a crazy authoritarian. He is Captain Crime Bill.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize, he actually wrote the bill that ended up becoming the Patriot Act during the 1990s, and the people who did pass the Patriot Act in 2001 basically almost copied and pasted verbatim from what Biden had presented. So he's always been this very fascistic, police state loving authoritarian,
racist, white
and
supremacist piece of shit.
And what kills me, people keep calling Democrats liberals, and it's like, no, they're not liberals, because if
No,
you look up
Joe
the word
Biden.
liberal in the dictionary, I mean, and I know people love to redefine words on a whim because
Words have no meaning.
Right. It's like the word terrorist has been stripped of all meaning, from someone who
Progressive has no meaning, leftist has no meaning.
right. So now people redefine them on a whim, but if you actually pay attention to what the word liberal means in the dictionary, if you break down each of the descriptor words for the definition of liberal, do Democrats meet any of these definitions? No. So you cannot call them liberal by any definition that is remotely reasonable. Mm-hmm. And yet we keep referring to them as shit libs or liberals. No, they're not liberals.
No,
Bernie Sanders was arguably a liberal before he let himself be cucked into a useless far right.
I think he's kind of always been cucked. I think he just put on a good show, honestly. I mean, he's
terrified of being labeled the next Ralph Nader.
Well, he's been like a loyal party soldier, really. I mean, I know he like plays an independent, but he's been like a loyal party guy since the 90s. I mean, Chris Hedges has written about this extensively. Like we made a deal with the Democrats, and he kind of plays ball. He does what he's told, and he's allowed to make a little bit of noise every now and then, but he's not going to challenge the Democratic establishment.
And apparently he was supposed to run against Obama in 2012, but he decided, no, I don't want that on my conscience. Never mind that Obama was much worse than George W. Bush, because Obama came right after George W. Bush, basically let Citibank pick his cabinet for him, and then continued and expanded all of Bush's worst policies. But with the added horror of having a complacent and very complicit corporate-owned media running interference for him and propagandizing the public to make it seem like he was like this liberal who at once was like the most progressive president ever, and yet somehow hobbled by the Republicans. Never mind that Obama picked the Cat Food Commission, appointed its heads, Alan Simpson and Erskine Bowles, to try and cut Social Security, Medicare, SNAP benefits, welfare, what remained of it after Bill Clinton got done raping it. But it just boggles my mind that Democrats have become so much farther to the right and so much worse than even the Republicans, who are such a clown show. It's not even worth mentioning which is why, when people respond, well, why don't you attack Republicans? We do, but it's pretty obvious, I mean, all you
Yeah.
have to do is just, mention it in the news, and it's like, okay, yeah, everyone gets it. But the Democrats insist on maintaining this pretense that they're any different or better, and they're not. And
They're arguably worse on a lot of things.
right, because
I mean,
they get support. It's like my aunt, bless her, she's a good woman, but she's a typical Democrat cultist, wishes, frequently wished that Trump would get COVID and die.
oh,
And then, just because she hates him that much, but she loves Biden, even though Biden is doing all the things that Trump was doing and then some. Because unlike with Trump, because really the only real opposition to Trump, and this has been pointed out, far more eloquently by people like Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore, but it took Democrats to do what Republicans couldn't. And it's like Trump, the only reason people oppose him in the first place was because, much like George W. Bush, when he was dictator, he ripped off the mask of civility from the US empire and really exposed its ugly true face to the American people and also to the rest of the world. And so that pretty much interrupted, during those brief tenures, the efforts of the empire to operate in the dark, which is why Julian Assange is in jail, because, again, he ripped off the mask and exposed the levers of power. So that's why he's in prison. That's why the United States, after Biden got in, continued the appeal, even though the extradition was denied. And now the appeal is moving forward and likely will be approved because they want him dead.
they're just going to drag it out. They're just
Yeah.
going to drag it out as
Yeah,
long as
they've
humanly
been
possible.
hoping
I
the
mean, all
entire
this appeal
time.
stuff could.
Yeah, they've been hoping the
Go
entire
ahead.
time that Assange will just die in prison, and so they don't have to actually deal with it. But if he survives long enough to be extradited, yeah, he will be thrown in prison and he will die there. Whether it's and
Yeah.
Vanessa Baratzer, who was the magistrate who basically railroaded him, always displayed her bias in favor of the prosecution. Never once did she ever consider. I mean, if she didn't have the pretense of American torture prisons being so much worse than what you see even in Britain, and Britain is pretty bad too. Belmarsh has the reputation it does for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But even she couldn't.
And he's a
American prison
journalist.
system,
He's
right?
a journalist. Like, he's an intellectual. He's
Yeah.
he has no violence in his history whatsoever. And they have him in the UK's Gitmo. And it's unbelievable. And this is after that they denied extradition. And what drives me absolutely fucking crazy is Vanessa Baratzer is like, oh, Julian Assange is in, we can't extradite him to the United States because he's a suicide risk and all of these things. But then she denies him bail. And how does she think that Julian Assange got to be
They want
in
him to
such
die under
a
their terms, not his.
right? But I'm like, to deny the extradition and then to be like, but we're going to keep him in prison in the same conditions that caused him to become a suicide risk. And that's just ridiculous. And they really are just so obvious about it. They're just trying to kick the can down the road. She doesn't want to, nobody really wants to be responsible for whatever's happening. So they're all just kind of playing off each other. Well, it's your fault. It's your fault. You know what I mean? Like it's that nobody's taking responsibility for what's happening. I mean, you have people like, why am I blanking on his name? Christ on a cracker.
Craig Murray?
No, like Blinken or something,
Anthony
or
Blinken, no.
maybe I don't know if it was him or not. I can't remember who said it,
Jen
but
Psaki and something, or maybe it was Mike Pompous, or I'm sorry, Pompeo.
right.
Who was,
But they won't even, they're like, oh, well, it's not really in my, like everybody's pretending like they have no power to end this. You know what I mean?
right.
Like literally everybody's like, oh, that's
Right,
not
just
my
so like with
call. And I don't want
Obama and the rest of the Democrats.
oh,
Like,
it's unbelievable. And they're just getting away with it. They're just getting, and
like,
it's not just
even when they
about
have all the
Julian.
power, they never have any power, which is a bullshit. Everyone sees through it. My job keeps me dealing with the public who, as they try and navigate the COVID pandemic. And that brings me to my next point. And before we move on, I just wanted to bring up Craig Murray was recently sentenced to prison for supposedly outing a witness in a criminal case involving accusations of sexual misconduct, and uh, the accused was acquitted, but the writing that Murray was doing didn't actually out the witness. Someone else actually outed the witness, but Murray took the heat for it, and he was convicted in the Scottish courts. He's trying to appeal through the United Kingdom Supreme Court, but if they're probably going to give Murray the Assange treatment too, because they don't want any. Because Murray's a prominent Assange supporter.
Well, I mean, Julian himself leaked the Stratford emails where they said that this is what they were going to do. We're going to, well, they said that we're going to tie him up and, move him from country to country facing charges for the next 25 years. And instead of doing that, they're just moving him, from court to court in the UK, like right now, but they're also going after the people that surround him. I mean, they've gone after Craig Murray, they've gone after Commander X, they've gone after, Ola Benny. That's what they do. It's in the Stratford emails. This is what we're going to do. We're going to tie him up in court stuff for 25 years, and we're going to go after the people around him. And that's what they're doing. And it's
and right
so
now,
apparent.
I think they're hoping he dies of COVID before he has to face anyone in the United States, which brings saying COVID is still a thing, even though they're not reporting the deaths anymore, and even though they're not doing the tracing. But you've got not only the Delta variant here in the United States, which is now I think the dominant strain and reduces the effectiveness of the vaccines, but now you've also got the Lambda variant, which was running wild in Peru and now is in the United Kingdom, and it's only a matter of time before it comes here to the United States, if it's not here already. And that thing is even twice as contagious as the Delta variant, which is twice as contagious as the original strain. So this thing's not over. This is going to be with us for many years to come, but the elites have decided that the 500,000 a year dead from this is
Joe Biden's president now.
Right.
And so it's more important to talk about Joe Biden's scrunchies and which dog peed in the hallway.
Girls' nipples on C-SPAN.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever it's very weird to me that people can't recognize the unbelievable difference in media coverage. And I hate when people do this, and I hate that I even have to preface it with this. I'm not like a Trump supporter, but just what Joe Biden is doing is no different and arguably worse than, if you are objectively looking at it, than anything Donald Trump did.
Oh yeah, I mean, for all the things that Trump was credibly accused of, Joe Biden is actually doing a lot worse, because especially because he's had a much longer political career to do more and worse than Trump could ever dream about. I mean,
and the media covers for him every step of the way.
Right. And one of the reasons that Trump wasn't able to deport half as many as Obama was in his first term was because, unlike with Obama and now Biden, local and state police forces were actually fighting him on deportations, and now they've gone back to cooperating because again the cameras are off mostly. I mean, when it takes that demented troll Ted Cruz to go down to Mexico and show what a flaming hypocrite Biden and the Democrats are when it comes to immigration, you've got problems as a political party.
AOC was calling them concentration camps. Like under Donald Trump, they were concentration camps. She's like on a fence, like sobbing, and she's just so overcome with emotion. Where is she?
Education camps,
right? No, it's what does she call them?
But no, let's
influx facilities or some. What the? Are you kidding me?
But no, let's call out China for supposedly putting Uyghur Muslims into concentration camps, even though
there's not really any evidence for that either.
And if you actually look at footage from there that's gotten out, it's like these are more or less people have access to tennis courts and basketball courts and amenities that the people down at the border don't have and will never have, because they're being treated like animals. They're literally caged like animals, packed like sardines, with COVID running rampant throughout. And
kids are getting abused and
and trafficked out of there. One of the things I've been reading, and I don't like to sound conspiratorial because I don't like to push stuff without evidence, but some of the articles I've read in the wake of FOSTA and SESTA, those anti-trafficking laws that actually increase trafficking, apparently one of the reasons Backpage was shut down was because it was actually cooperating with authorities to prevent sex trafficking, especially of minors. And someone, and presumably this is tied in with the same types who were big in with Epstein and others, where they were trafficking minors, especially minors of color, people, immigrants, especially disappearing them. Backpage was actually helping to fight that, and so they got shut down under FOSTA and SESTA, which, frankly, is baffling to me. It's like, why would you shut down uh, what was essentially, another version of Craigslist that's actually helping to reduce sex trafficking, and with the law that actually increases it, because you're just driving it underground and placing even fewer controls on it than there were before, when it's just stupid.
Yeah, no. And I mean, just near here, and this is why it happens under Democrats too, just near where I live, maybe like an hour and a half away. There were like a dozen kids who were rescued who had been trafficked, who were like doing forced labor on some farm. And so it happens under Democrats. Like, these kids are being trafficked left and right. Like, I know people don't like to think about that. I don't either. It's a very dark thought. These are children. I mean, what's happening is really dark. But it is happening, and we have to like face it. I know it sucks to think about, and people don't want to like talk about it because but it's happening. And not enough people are talking about it, I don't think, because I think it's way more prevalent than people even begin to imagine.
Yeah, and for all the people that were who are pushing Pizzagate as though it was a real thing, I mean, that
was intentional.
Leave it to conspiracy nuts to focus on the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, because
that was intentional. That was like an
just
intentional.
Like the 9/11 conspiracy nuts, just like the anti-vaxxers and the COVID conspiracy nuts. I mean, the whole Wuhan lab conspiracy theory. And in fact, if you watch one of my recent videos on the subject, there's evidence that's come out both last year and this year, as recently as May, that the COVID strain that started this whole thing actually started in Europe and the United States. And so, now you've got this situation where, you're looking at the timeline where COVID is supposedly, originated in a lab in China and supposedly got released back in November or something. But, there's sewage samples from Spain dated to March 2019 where traces of COVID-19 showed up. And then back in May, there was an article that, confirmed this. And, there were parts of the United States where it was showing up. And Whitney Webb and a couple of others are of the opinion that a lot of the vaping deaths that were being reported on a couple years ago might have been misdiagnosed COVID, because nobody knew about it at the time. So they just figured, what's the common denominator, where a lot of these people were vaping, so maybe there's something in there. But now there's evidence apparently that maybe it wasn't the vaping that killed people, it was actually COVID. So if you're trying to push the China Wuhan conspiracy theory, well, this throws out the timeline completely, because if it was already here like way before 2019, then we'd have to probably name it COVID-18.
I think it's okay to question everything, though. I will say that. Like, I think it's okay to examine all of those, because I put absolutely nothing past the people, the people in charge.
It's not that I don't believe in conspiracies. I think that
I just think I hate when and this is not like, I'm not slamming you, but when people are super dismissive of conspiracy theorists, because a lot of those people who are, I'm called a conspiracy theorist at times. And so a lot of like that it's like, you should question everything. Whatever you think they're doing, it's 100 times worse.
My thinking on the available evidence. So, the whole cockamamie bullshit about Pizzagate and planted explosives.
Well, but again, Pizzagate was an intentional psyop. Like, that was meant to trivialize, the conversation around pedophile rings and elite circles, which we know exist. This is not like a new thing. It's so weird to me that everybody's like, it's such a taboo subject, because
Jeffrey Epstein was a thing. So, but with regards to 9/11, I do believe there was a conspiracy. I just don't believe in the planted explosives or or remote controlled airplanes or anything like
I
that.
think there's compelling evidence, but
Right.
I don't, I mean, I
You know,
can't.
I think it's more like, you know, criminal negligence in the lead up to it. I mean, Bob Graham, a former senator from Florida, was on the Real News a couple of years ago, you know, explaining, you know, the papers that he saw that were classified suggests that the CIA was actually trying to recruit the hijackers as assets to be double agents. Uh, and this was an illegal operation because the CIA is not allowed to conduct operations stateside. But they were trying to turn these hijackers into assets and, you know, basically got investigators off their backs. And so, you know, but the hijackers were not going to be turned, that was never going to happen. So, you know, that's one example of where, you know, there's a cover up after the fact, because if they let it become widely known that the United States government was criminally incompetent on a level that, you know, we just never imagined. I mean, some of us were like, I mean, it's just, I think conspiracies more often than not tend to be a lot more mundane and out in the open than we think. Edward Snowden started a Substack to explain just this phenomenon, that he explains more in abstract terms, but in concrete terms, uh, I think the real conspiracy behind 9/11 was covering up malign neglect that nobody seemed to want to do anything about it, you know, for ideological reasons, because others, such as Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz and Cheney, wanted the war against Iraq and needed a justification. Bush wanted to protect his Saudi pals. And then there's just this general right-wing ideological tendency to really kind of ignore problems until they happen, and then do as little action as possible to actually help the victims. You know, we saw that in the wake of Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. So, you know, various overlapping reasons, but when you all boil it down to its basic component, it was just malign neglect and covering it up after the fact. But if you go in with the cockamamie bullshit of like planted explosives and remote controlled airplanes and missiles hitting the Pentagon, well, you wonder why these people aren't in jail. Well, it's because of nutty conspiracy fantasies like this that have no basis in fact. So, you know, so that's my theory. Anyway, I'm sticking to
it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So what else do you want to talk about? Because I know there's recently Britney Spears had her conservatorship upheld by a judge on the cockamamie ruling that she can still apply to have it dissolved, but she just did, and it was denied. So
yeah, it's really scary to me that a grown-ass woman can be put under conservatorship for 13 years and, you know, be railroaded the way that she has been. That should terrify everyone. I mean,
yeah,
this is her.
And at the same time, Bill Cosby, a convicted rapist with plenty of evidence, was released on the basis that the prosecution did its job, and Cosby basically put up a weak defense, and we're supposed to be fine with him getting out of prison. I don't think so. Oh, the prosecutor's prepared to appeal that ruling, but
That's what happens.
so a serial rapist goes free while a woman who spent her, you know, pretty much most of her adult life, you know, half of it at least, under the control of her family, especially her father. I mean, a lot of the stuff that has come out, you know, with regards to the level of control that they've been exercising over her. I mean, it just is mind-boggling. I mean, they even forced her to get an IUD to prevent her from conceiving because they don't want anyone else being able to show up and claim a part of her estate, you know, once she's dead and gone. I mean, she's already got 2 kids as it is, but they don't want anyone else popping up that might, you know, pose a threat to Papa getting his take.
Yeah, I don't know
Those
if
kids aren't
that's
going to be kids forever.
No, I don't know if that's the reasoning for them doing it, or if they just want, you know, just control over what's happening now and her money now or whatever. But
Right.
yeah,
Well, it's the idea that, you know, Papa is not going to be alive forever. He knows that, but he also knows that the kids are not going to be minors forever, and, you know, they are her sons. So, you know, they're going to have legitimate claims to her estate, in any case. So I think Papa wants to prevent any more people who might have a potential claim down the road, because maybe he's already raising the sons to, be like him and control her so that they can leech off of her. But I don't know. I mean, how much longer can you leech off of someone whose star rose and fell, well over a decade ago?
I mean, she's still Britney, but yeah, I think that her it's more than even just about the money for me. It's about the fact that it's her life, and they think that they get to control literally all aspects of it. Like you said, her reproductive rights, her ability to get married if she wants to, whether or not she works, or when she works, or where she works, or I mean, all of her decisions are made for her, and
Yeah.
she is a grown ass adult.
Right. Well, if
And
she studies Mahatma Gandhi, she can simply refuse to cooperate
yeah.
and face the consequences for that. Uh, but they can't make her go on stage.
No, that's true. But and she's talking about her manager just quit because she's talking about retiring. And I think that she should. I mean, that sucks that she has to go to that extreme. And maybe she like once, I don't know her, so I don't
Yeah,
know
but
if
would she be
she,
allowed to retire though? I mean, what are the terms of this conservatorship? I mean, would she be allowed to even retire?
I don't know. That's, something we'd have to look into. But yeah, I just think that um she's worked her entire life, like her entire life, literally.
Yeah,
I mean, she was on the Mickey Mouse show when she was a
yeah, Mickey
child.
Mouse Club.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and so she's worked her entire existence, and the fact that she is now under complete control over, or her dad has complete control over her life, and it even like to what therapist she goes to and how often she goes to said therapist. And despite the fact that she is like telling them, I'm not getting anything out of this is not, what I mean, and they're still forcing her to do like I think it's something crazy. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think it's like 4 like days a week or some shit. And they make her go to the therapist's office rather than, I mean, she's Britney Spears, and I know that sounds very bougie or whatever, but if you're famous like that and you're also suffering from mental health issues or troubles, do you really want to have to go like public to a therapist's office where there's going to be paparazzi in your face? And that seems, potentially very counterproductive.
yeah, and Schunk
But
Yogurt and anal Casper not so friendly, and making jokes about her vagina.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, all that stuff was really damaging. I mean, I don't even think TYT recognizes how damaging the stuff that they did actually was. I mean, they put revenge porn up. I mean, literal revenge porn of
Yeah,
like an 18-year-old girl. And it's arguable that the pictures that were taken were potentially taken when she was under the age of 18. And the fact that they shared that on their show and then posted the uncensored ones on their website
yeah,
is really disturbing.
yeah, and what really kills me is like these are people who have no shame, but they also put, and this was actually part of their recorded show, where they put one of their, I don't know if she was a producer or some kind of technician behind the camera, but they put her on the spot and grilled her over this offer she got from Playboy about the girls of YouTube, and she turned it down because she didn't want to kill her career. And Chunk was like, what career? And and saying, oh, I would totally take the money, and it's like, you should reconsider it. And you can tell she's uncomfortable,
Yeah,
right?
no,
So
they had a disgusting work environment. I mean,
right,
seriously.
and to create that kind of toxic atmosphere, and then try and blackmail Jimmy Dore for just pointing out, oh, hey, nice news skirt, like real appropriate attire, and then Kyle Kulinski's like, well,
Uh-oh.
who
Don't
are you
say
to say
inappropriate.
appropriate? It's like, well, someone who actually has worked like real jobs before.
Well, why is it
That's how you're
okay for
pretending.
her to subject her subordinates to being flashed every time she bends over?
Right.
That's not, they didn't consent to
It's
that.
no different than if a male boss had gone in, wearing shorts where his like schlong was hanging out and bent over and exposed himself. He would be in real trouble for Me Too harassment. But, because it's Anna Kasparian, it's like we're
She's the
supposed to,
victim.
yeah. It's like, no, no. Have you ever seen that movie with Demi Moore and Michael Douglas where Demi Moore harasses Michael Douglas. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was maybe Disclosure or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
it's like, yeah, women do sexually harass too. It's not as often as men. I mean, if you want to know why Brendan Fraser retired from the limelight so often, it's because a male producer actually groped his rear
Yeah.
end, and when he rejected that advance, he got blacklisted
That
for
happens
that.
a lot in Hollywood.
Yeah,
A lot. And back to the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing and the elite, people need to go watch An Open Secret. It's a documentary about the rampant pedophilia and child abuse in Hollywood. And it's
yeah,
really, 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 really depressing.
yeah. In fact, Corey Feldman has been
Hmm.
trying for years to get his documentary out there to explain what happened to him, and presumably also to Corey Haim
Hmm. No,
and others
yeah. I
who,
mean, I think that there's
you
a ton of those stories. So many of those stories. You know what I mean? Like it's rampant in Hollywood.
yeah, I'm
Um,
sure it doesn't happen to everyone, but
but
it
it
happens
happens a
in
lot.
different
I
ways.
mean, if you've seen the
Does.
documentary, they talk about these like entire parties being thrown where there's like dozens of young boys brought to this, Hollywood bigwigs party,
Yeah,
and they get to do drugs and drink, and shit happens, and it's really, really, really bad.
yeah, and what's amazing is that it all gets swept under the rug, and so this is what really angers me is the rampant hypocrisy from the Democrat section of the extreme right, as represented by people like Alyssa Milano. Katha Pollitt,
Oh,
was like saying in 2020, like Joe Biden could rape a 5-year-old in front of me, and I would still vote for him, or words to that effect. And I'm like, seriously?
Alyssa Milano is a huge hypocrite. Oh, it's
Yeah,
so terrible.
yeah.
I mean,
She's
she's outside the Kavanaugh hearing with her little sign, "Believe all women," and she's crying. And but then
that throws Tara Reid under the bus, right?
when it's
Because
Tara Reid, nope, 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 nope. I'm still going to
yeah,
endorse Joe Biden. I'm going to talk about how he's a champion for women, and I'm going to, that's gross.
yeah, and pissing off Rose McGowan, who I haven't
Oh, I
actually
love
heard
Rose
from her in a
McGowan so
while.
much.
I wonder if she might have gotten banned from Twitter because I haven't seen her post on Twitter in a while, or maybe they unfollowed me from her. I don't know.
Maybe that happens a lot.
I'll have to look her up. But yeah, it's just insane how this just feeds into the perpetual circus. I mean, if you remember what Jesse Ventura was saying about politics and between Republicans and Democrats are like professional wrestlers, where they pretend to fight each other when the cameras are on, but then when the cameras stop rolling and the lights are off, they're hanging out at the same clubs and eating the same meals and cozying up with one another, and it's just all theater.
Yes. No, I mean, there was just a picture released where Donald Trump's daughter was vacationing with Joe Biden's granddaughter. Chelsea Clinton and Ivanka,
Yeah,
whatever the fuck her name
Ivanka, yeah.
is. Yeah, they're like they've been friends since they were kids. Trump went to Hillary Clinton, or Hillary Clinton went to Trump's wedding. Like this, they put on a show, and I'm sure that there's some level of, I mean, there's cliques and all of that
Right.
stuff. It's like high school with
Right,
psychopaths.
and there was a falling out because Hillary Clinton, was acting, as early as 2000, like the White House was hers, and Obama upstaged her and got in because no one likes Hillary Clinton. I mean, everyone, pretty much knows what a slime ball she is, and she comes across as cold and mean, and nobody likes her. So what are the chances she's going to be an effective manager of empire? Well, Obama came on the scene. He was young, relatively clean record. Although if you dug deeper, you saw the corruption because it came out of the Chicago political machine. Obviously, he's going to be a corrupt asshole. But he was clean enough to not have the skeletons in his closet that Hillary Clinton did. So the elites chose him over John McCain and over Hillary Clinton. She never really got over that. Then she ran in 2016. Trump upstaged her again
She handpicked her own opponent
and still lost to him.
and lost. Well, I mean, did she really lose though? Because the elections
Well,
are,
right. Well, she
you know,
did, but again, you have to keep in mind most elections in this country are rigged on a level that most people don't even realize, and it's not necessarily dead people voting. That's always been a lie, and it's
completely
not
rigged.
necessarily the mail-in ballots. Although, from what I've been hearing on channels like the Convo Couch, there is some evidence of that, but it's really the ballot flipping,
Scams.
the electronic ballot flipping, the
Mhm.
people who count the votes who just toss ballots in the trash without even bothering to count them, whether it's for
It's
third party.
proprietary software that we can't
Right.
audit in any way, shape, form, or fashion. We have, and like, like I think it's like a 12-year-old little girl hacked it in like under 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and got into a voting machine. I mean, this is, and we pretend to care about democracy, and our elections are supposed to, we talk all this big game, and interfering, Russia's interfering. Are you kidding? We interfere in our own elections more than anybody could ever hope to. It's ridiculous that that's like a thing that we try to claim moral superiority over, because our elections are trash. I mean, we consistently rank dead last among Western democracies as far as election integrity goes.
Yeah.
It's a joke. We're a joke. It's the year 2021 and we can't figure out how to run an election. Well, I mean, it's by design, but our elections are a complete sham. It's not even, you know, uh,
Yeah, and that's one of the 14 characteristics of fascism,
mhm.
that elections are complete shams. Rising and increasing nationalism. I mean, there didn't used to be these public displays of military parades and ceremonies at sporting events. Those are a relatively recent phenomenon in our history, and now it's getting to the point. I remember reading last year. Uh, some guy cracked open the skull of a 13-year-old because he didn't remove his hat fast enough for the national anthem in a baseball game. And it's like, what the hell? I mean, you've turned the military into a religion.
Yeah,
My cousin, one of my cousins is a Jehovah's Witness, and he doesn't believe in idol worship or worshiping false religions, as he considers them. My aunt thinks he's in some kind of cult, but my cousin's got a point. When you turn these military ceremonies into a religion in which violence and intimidation are used to suppress wrongthink. I mean, look what they did to Colin Kaepernick. I mean, he's no angel, because of his Nike endorsements. Because if you know Nike's history, I mean, yeah, I mean, hypocrite much, but it's still, he made a political statement in an arena in which politics had already been inserted. It's just that his politics were not the orthodox politics that's enforced. And so, like I said, religious zealotry, except it's transferred from the church to the sports arena, to the political arena.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Steve Wickenden talks about that all the time, about how, we've kind of shifted as we've become a more secular society. That energy is being focused in all, I mean, it's celebrity worship. The fact that there's like this weird celebrity cult of personality where we've put these people up on, I mean, some people put these people up on like these weird pedestals, and, it's a weird thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
whatever romanticism I had for historical figures and current figures, died, with my childhood. But I just never really saw people in history as being, these great figures whom you must never ever criticize. I mean, the founders,
No.
I mean, there's a lot of bashing of them, and rightly so. Uh, but I kind of take the Frank Zappa approach to history. These were very flawed men who had some good ideas and ideals that we should aspire to live up to. But even they were not perfect. They seldom lived up to their own lofty rhetoric. And, we have to take the bad along with the good, but, not ignore either, and take a complete view of history and the people within it, just like we have to take a complete view today, where when you understand just what a slime ball a particular politician is, even if it's a nice slime ball like Bernie Sanders, but he's still a slime ball.
Yes. I don't even think he's nice, honestly. I don't think he's nice. Nice people don't do what he does. Nice people don't do what he did.
Yeah.
You don't take millions of dollars from millions of people knowing you have no intention whatsoever of fighting, and then walking off the field and never mentioning the fact that you got screwed over.
Twice.
And yeah, twice out loud. Like they didn't, first
They
WikiLeaks
didn't
gave
even
you,
pretend to act like the thumbs weren't all on the scale. I mean, how do you let that happen and not understand, this is really bullshit?
Oh, he knows it's bullshit, but he's just not willing to stand up and fight for the people. I mean, the whole fight for somebody you don't know is bullshit. That dude has no intention of fighting for you, clearly. What has he done? Like people have this idealized version of who he is and what he's done and all of this stuff. And that's not to say that he hasn't done some good things. Like we've
Yeah.
just said, nobody is like an entire whatever. Nobody's
Have you
completely
seen Eddie
good.
Murphy Raw?
Mm,
Yeah, it's a show that he put out in the 80s. It's like there's this one sketch. What have you done for me lately?
yeah. Yeah, no, and but nobody is like 100% good, 100% bad. So he's a mixed bag, but he's not a nice person. He's just not. The things that he has done, the gaslighting he has done, the lying, the manipulation for war criminals. I
Yeah,
mean, he for war criminals, he told everybody that Joe Biden was a decent man and a good friend. He is a war criminal. He is a horrible human being.
yeah. It's
He
like
should be nowhere near a
I know. I
position of
mean, you
power.
can't be friends with a war criminal and call yourself a human being.
No,
It's just not
at
possible.
least not a nice one for sure.
Right. And right. And it's like, as much as I despise Howie Hawkins for his part in helping Joe Biden get elected, because he stole the Green Party nomination rather blatantly. Every
Yeah.
candidate who ran in the Green Party nomination process last year was calling it out, but somehow, oh yeah,
Shout out to Ian Schlackman. He's
right,
my favorite.
right. So he steals the nomination and then proceeds to campaign worse than Jill Stein did in
Oh,
2012. And at least Jill Stein had the benefit of running for the first, like, I think that was her first presidential run in 2012.
hmm.
So she had the benefit of, maybe not knowing completely what she was doing, first time. Uh, and, not having the infrastructure there after all these years of the Hawkins faction running the Green Party into the ground. She actually built it up to the point where it got yeah, still a pathetic, 1.07% of the vote in 2016, but that was more than double what she had gotten in 2012. Hawkins did worse than Joe Stein did in 2012. She got, I think, 0.34% of the vote or something like that. In 2012, Hawkins got 0.2%.
Yeah. His
One
campaign was an
fifth of
embarrassment.
right.
His
And
campaign was such an
he was a
embarrassment.
Russiagator too.
Yes, and he dead named Chelsea Manning, and he is I don't know, he was shit on Assange. Like he did the whole
Yeah,
Russiagate.
he
Assange
shat
is
completely
yeah,
on Assange.
yeah,
Basically, all but flat out accused Jill Stein of being a Russian asset.
yeah.
So it's like he was never going to have my vote. I voted
Mm-mm.
for Dario Hunter as a write-in because I got to support my Ohio politician. So, but it's like what is the major malfunction with our Green Party that they cannot get their act together? I mean, they know how desperate the climate emergency is, but we're looking at being extinct as a species within our lifetimes.
Well, there's a
Generation
reason why
X,
they
my
can't.
generation,
There's a
might be
reason
the
why they
last to
haven't.
live out its actuarial lifespan.
There's a reason why they haven't been successful though. It's like I said earlier, is the system is too far gone. That's why I don't think a third party is a
Right,
viable, like it's not,
right. Well,
we have to start organizing outside the
right.
system
Well,
because
it's one component in a toolbox, and we've only been using that one tool in the toolbox for 40 years. Like I said, I mean, I don't give up on electoral politics because you've got to have that in a capacity, but you have to understand the sort of electoral politics that put Franklin Roosevelt into office. You had not only the Democrats, you had unions, which were a lot more powerful back then. You had the Progressive Party, which I'm trying to help revive here in Ohio. Um, but you had the Progressive Party that was started by Theodore Roosevelt 20 years earlier, still present and running people in elections and getting a fair chunk of the vote. Maybe not much, but enough where the Democrats had to move to the left in order to, win elections. So you had that apparatus in there. You also had worker strikes. You had real opposition on the streets, and that's what we need. We need that combination that we had back in 1932 to really kind of like put the fear into politicians where they actually do what we want them to do. But if you rely solely on one component and ignore the rest, then yeah, it's going to fail.
Yeah, I just don't think electoral politics. That's just my opinion. I don't think electoral politics
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
at
because
a local level, maybe
yeah,
like
because
you can make
Occupy
some
Wall Street
differences.
failed because it didn't pursue electoral politics, but it also didn't seem to have any organizational structure or any leadership structure, and it didn't seem to have any real message. So it ended up, very quickly getting put down by Obama. But it was the start of something. But you have to combine that with movement politics and electoral politics, and really kind of demonstrate, that it's, like I said, that disorganized riot on January 6th put enough fear to bring a draconian crackdown. But if you had like 1 million people, 2 million, 3 million flooding Washington, D.C., and generally shutting down the city and storming barricades in tandem with a left wing populist and anti authoritarian, you could accomplish something pretty major. But we have to get that accomplished within, the next few years, because otherwise,
That's why electoral
yeah,
politics isn't going to work, because it's going to take way too long for
not,
that.
not on its own. No.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree, because to me, electoral politics, we've seen it. I mean, the squad was supposed to go in and challenge the Democratic.
Yeah.
It's completely rigged.
Yeah.
They're never going to allow anyone with any actual ability to challenge power to ever get elected.
Well, keep in mind that the squad got elected as yet another in a long line of failed efforts to reform the Democrats from within, without any of the outside agitation from the left. Really kind of like, and I mean, we had the perfect opportunity with the Black Lives Matter protests last year to coalesce into a movement that could, build on and in tandem with electoral politics to, really make a change. But the two failed to connect. And so you've got, the Justice Democrats, or as I call them, just Democrats, really kind of co-opting the movement, like they were supposed to, and really kind of doing what Obama did back in.
That's electoral politics.
Right.
that's what electoral politics accomplishes. It just moves, like the squad didn't pull anybody to the left; they pulled the left to the right, and that's what electoral politics is designed to do, to get people involved in a system that's completely corrupt and openly and actively trying to sabotage, the people's movement.
And that's why you bring the pitchforks and the guillotines and start, I mean, like I said, read up on the history of the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. People literally lost their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And especially during the French Revolution, even the revolution leaders lost their heads, literally, because they didn't know when to stop, and then people got sick of them and off with their heads. So, but when it gets to that point, obviously, that's when you start seeing real agitation and real change. The medieval peasant system broke down as a result of the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, and it wasn't just the peasants. The merchant class also rising up. The people between peasants and merchant class, so the renegades within the church at the time were rising up, who saw their leaders as corrupt and wanted to change. John Wycliffe and his followers played an integral role in the Peasants' Revolt, agitating for their religious reforms that eventually culminated with the breakaway with Rome a couple centuries later. So a lot of this really is a situation in which there needs to be that action in the streets before electoral politics can even have a hope of succeeding. But you have to also be able to connect the two in such a way that it's the movement that leads to politics and not the other way around. Last year we saw the other way around, like we've been seeing for the last 40 years. So and you begin to see where it gets frustrating. It's not that I'm disagreeing with your point about electoral politics. Like I said, I just view it as one tool in the toolbox that we've been using to the exclusion of all the others that we should have been using at the same time. And that's why electoral politics fail. So you can tell I probably took history classes too. My major was in film and digital media, but I also took history as well. It's just, you get to see patterns where people don't learn shit. And it's like Howard Zinn used to say, of course history repeats itself. People don't listen.
Yeah. Humans are not very bright.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. So yeah. And then of course I'm reading about a very interesting thing with regards to climate change, and I'll send you a link to this through Twitter if you want to take a look at it. There was an article that was saying that uh, just stopping methane and carbon emissions, that's not going to be enough anymore. In addition to that, we now also have to engage in a very aggressive carbon and methane capture, because methane's an even more potent heat trapper than carbon dioxide. And there's enough of both in the atmosphere where if we don't get that back in the ground where it belongs, we're screwed. We've got under 10 years to get the job done.
Yeah,
Not to talk about
I
it,
haven't seen
not
any
to
of that.
pass
So
cap and trade, which was nothing but a shell game that allowed polluters to keep polluting. We have 9 years or under to get the job done.
yeah, I think we're too far gone. I think it's going
Yeah.
to be bad for us. But I haven't seen any of that stuff, so I haven't been
Yeah.
following all that very closely.
Have you seen 12 Monkeys?
Yes.
If we're lucky, we might end up like that.
Yes.
If we're lucky.
I love that movie, actually. I have a huge crush on Mila Jovovich, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love her. I love
Okay.
her.
Yeah, well, I don't think she was in that movie, but yeah, with 12 Monkeys, it was like with the
Oh no, I'm
Bruce
thinking
Willis and
Fifth
Brad
Element.
Pitt, and
Sorry. I was just thinking Fifth Element. Sorry.
yeah, no, I love that movie too,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, I think Madeline Stowe was in 12 Monkeys,
Hmm.
like a psychiatrist, but you know that was actually Terry Gilliam. He was the American member of Monty Python, and you know after they went their separate ways finally in the early 80s, they went on to do their own careers. He had his trilogy about the triumph of the human spirit with Brazil. Then it continued with Time Bandits, and then finished with the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And 12 Monkeys was one of his darker films, along with The Fisher King, and it just, you know, I don't think that was meant to be a prophecy, but it looks like it might end up being one.
Right.
Because if you remember, you know, the premise of that movie, a virus drove the human race underground.
Yeah. Who knows what they've got planned for us?
Nothing good.
No,
Well,
definitely
you know,
not.
Bezos and Musk and you know, a few others are thinking that they're going to escape into space. It's like these boys clearly have never been out into space and don't know what it's like, and they're
Right.
going to realize the hard way that their efforts to escape Earth and leave the rest of us to die are going to fail, because it's not enough to just launch yourself in a rocket. There are literally thousands of people on hand at any given moment to troubleshoot problems and, you know, keep you alive up there, and they don't have that capacity. You need a human race surviving on Earth to keep you alive in space and even on another planet, because on another planet you're cut off from all communication, you know, because of the time differential. You need to rely on people back home.
Sorry, my kid was just yelling at me.
Oh, okay.
She's like, "Mommy, what are you doing?"
Yeah, my aunt came home earlier and was yelling down for me. So I ended up, I was staying with relatives at the time the COVID pandemic hit, and been stuck here ever since, and trying to find a place right now. But you know, it's like rents keep going up just when I think I've got enough saved, and then on top of that, surprisingly few people even get back to me when I make an inquiry.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Because I
like,
thought rentals were like is it? I mean, I haven't really. I don't
well, I'm
know.
just looking for a basic one bedroom, but it's like, you know, they want like 600-700 bucks just
Oh
for
yeah.
a bedroom, and then you're not even getting utilities in.
Where are you at? Where? Oh, what state are you in?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. You're in Ohio. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Ohio's
really,
it's going up, but it is still one of the cheapest. Like it's not bad. Cost of living in Ohio is, pretty decent
could be
compared
better.
to.
There are parts of Ohio I think I could live in, you know, at my current wages, but our minimum wage at this point needs to be 16-17 bucks an hour, because of inflation and the cost of living and housing. Uh, you know, if and you know, I know a lot of people are like, oh, but if you keep raising wages, you know, inflation will kill us, and you know, prices will go up. Well, prices are already going up, and we haven't had an increase in the minimum wage in decades. So, you know, that's a lie.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, even if you don't like the idea of raising wages, but you have to at least put caps on prices, especially for housing, foodstuffs, utilities, so that people can afford to
I don't know
live.
who would be against raising wages. I mean, other than, oligarchs and billionaires.
Right.
But it's weird when like you hear working class people defend, like a Jeff Bezos or whatever. It's like, what are you doing? That guy is,
They're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip. I mean, if you wonder why, theaters are dying and why, in fact, when I started film school back in 2011, because I had, no, it was 2010. I'm sorry, 2010. I went back to film school in 2010, had my first film classes in 2011 and 2012. Uh, Film was announced as being discarded in favor of all digital. So, that created a ruckus in Hollywood. I mean, you've still got people devoted to celluloid like Martin Scorsese and
Mhm.
even Jar Jar Abrams, still uses film.
Jar Jar Abrams.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I'm not a fan of his, if you couldn't tell, but yeah, I hate what he did to Star Trek and Star Wars.
That's funny.
Franchise is ruined, and now he's set to ruin what's left of the DCEU, and that's going to be such a shit show. It's going to be hilarious. But to get back on track, one of the reasons why celluloid was done away with as the official medium of Hollywood, and why now you've got all these streaming services competing with movie theaters, it's got nothing to do with the cost of film. All right, that was always a lie. It's got to do with control of content, distribution, presentation. If you can go to a movie theater and pay to see something, but the movie theater can, especially with film, find ways to do secret showings outside of the contractual allotted number during a day. And that takes control away from Hollywood because that's money taken from their pockets. Then you've got, so they made the move to digital, first with digital discs, and now everything is streaming in real time. So that if the studio catches a theater trying to show a film, more times than is contractually allowed, you can shut it down like right there on the spot remotely. And so now even that is going by the wayside, or at least that's the attempt, because streaming services and DVDs and Blu-rays are now, they're trying to get rid of those, because why let someone pay once for something and then not have to go back for a while to replace it, when you can keep charging someone over and over and over again to watch each time, and you control what that person is allowed to watch. You control, the content itself as to whether it's edited to remove stuff that you don't like. I mean, it's very scary Orwellian stuff, but it's all about control and forcing people to pay through the roof for every little thing.
Yes, and they are
Because
absolutely seeking control over all information.
traditional modes of profit making are no longer enough to satiate the appetite of capital. You start going for things that, the little things that you used to leave alone as small potatoes. Well, now you're so greedy that looks like a giant freaking steak compared to the caviar that you've been eating. So gobbled it all up.
Yeah, very true.
So now people have to bounce between Netflix and Paramount Plus, which was previously CBS No Access, because you couldn't afford it. And absolute shit content, a bad Star Trek ripoff from Alex Klutzman, a serial thief who's stolen the idea for Cowboys and Aliens. It's rumored that he stole the island from its content creator. There was a video game creator named Anas Abdeen, who lives overseas, created this game called Tardigrades. They ripped off his video games to make Star Trek Discovery. And there was, Robert Meyer Burnett. They ripped off some of his ideas for Discovery season 3, where they're 1,000 years in the future, where there's no more Federation. That was apparently Robert Meyer Burnett's idea. So there's a lot of thievery going on with Alex Klutzman, and he can't even make good content based on stolen property. At least with Deep Space Nine back in the late 80s, early 90s, that they stole the basic idea from J. Michael Straczynski when he did Babylon 5. So this isn't the first time CBS has been caught, with allegations of property theft. But it gets to the point where you're just blatantly stealing people's ideas and selling it as your own. And because you're a money corporation, you're protected. And now you're charging people, all these different streaming services, and so you have to budget your money, like which streaming services am I going to cancel this month so I can afford the other streaming service. And it gets to a point, it's like, I don't think the streaming model is going to work in the long run. I think it's already dead in the water. The pandemic showed that people would still rather go to darkened movie theaters, as it did for King Kong, Godzilla versus Kong. Even though I think it's a rather mediocre movie, but people still went to see it in record numbers. So
Did they?
I don't think well, record numbers for the pandemic era. Let me add that caveat. But yeah, I think it shows that there's still an interest in going to a darkened movie theater, where at least it's air conditioned and you don't have to watch it on a small screen.
Yeah, I think right now people are just excited to get out of the house for just about anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the last movie I saw in theaters was Tenet, and I don't know what the hell Christopher Nolan was thinking, because he made it specifically so that it would play only on theaters with like the latest and greatest in audio technology. I went and saw it at the Cedar Lee Theater, where its audio system was not so great, and so I couldn't understand most of what the dialogue was, and the plot was so nonsensical. It's like, what did I just see? And I'm still trying to figure it out like 6 months later. Like, what the hell did I just see? I know Denzel Washington's kid was in it. I know Captain Sparkleface was in it,
Oh,
who's playing the new Batman. God, what's his name? Robert Pattinson, I think. Yeah, Robert Pattinson. So there's a new Batman movie coming out. Whether it hits theaters or not, I don't know. It'll probably premiere on HBO Max at some point. I think if HBO is smart, they'll do both theaters and HBO Max, like they did with Godzilla versus Kong. But I don't think you're going to see much more demand for Zack Snyder's boring 4-hour long monuments to Ayn Rand masquerading as a DC superhero movie.
yeah.
I mean 4 hours long, and it's even worse than what we got in the theaters in 2017. Why did they throw an additional $80 million at this thing?
Because they can, I guess. I don't know.
Right, because nobody wanted to be the one to tell Zack Snyder that he doesn't know how to make a movie that's even remotely watchable.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I think there was this morbid fascination because of the pandemic and HBO needing something to launch its streaming service with. They just picked this because Snyder does have a small but devoted following, and they were demanding it. And Snyder took advantage of the reaction to the theatrical version and the backlash against Joss Whedon for his abusive behavior to push Warner Brothers to throw an additional $80 million on something that had already cost them close to $1 billion to make, because they had to do reshoots for the theatrical release. So you're making one movie for the price of two, just like they did with Solo: A Star Wars Story. I mean, seriously, they had to reshoot 75% of that movie after the two directors were kicked to the curb and Ron Howard was brought in. So they spent all this money, and if even Ron Howard, who actually makes good movies, can't save it, it's a doomed project.
They'll never learn.
Yeah.
They just keep making the same movies over and over again too, which is
it's so. I mean, I think if anything, that they should look at the examples of Shazam and Joker, which were both made on mid-range budgets and did pretty well. I mean, Joker was made on a production budget of about $60 million, and with the marketing and distribution, probably didn't quite make it to $100 million total, but it made over $1 billion at the box office. So if you do the math, that's a very healthy investment, return on investment. And Shazam, unfortunately, suffered from having to compete with Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame, So, it suffered, but it still had a pretty mid-range budget and did, pretty nicely enough to get a sequel. I think if movies, just kind of scale back, you don't need to spend like $500 million making and marketing a movie and have to justify making it with a, minimum like $1 billion box office. Just make a good movie with a good story, and you don't need to distract people with flashy special effects and extended bloated chase scenes and all this other crap. Just make a good freaking movie. And the content will sell itself. Oh my God.
Yeah. Hollywood's pretty terrible.
Yeah. In more ways than one, as we've been learning over the last several years, which brings it back to me too, because I just sent away for and got Tara Reid's book. So I'm going to be reading that. And
love her.
Now that I've posted about that, I'm sure Facebook will be telling me that I've been exposed to violent extremist content.
Yes.
That I need therapy now, which brings us to the next topic that I wanted to bring up is oh yeah, we think you need counseling now because you may have been exposed to extreme content, and we have to deprogram you now. Because you shared an article linked to Julian Assange or Tara Reid that was mildly supportive.
Yeah. A lot of us have been trying to warn people about this very slippery, and I hate the term slippery slope because it's very cliche, but this has been going on for a long time, for decades really, but over the past 10 or 15 years, there has been like an enormous ramp up over narrative control and narrative management. And that is really the front lines of everything else that we're dealing with, because if you can't, access legitimate information, share legitimate information, have conversations about your ideas and your policies, and there's no way you can effectively fight for anything. If you want healthcare, there's no way you're going to be able to fight for that if you don't have press freedom and the ability to disperse information. And we're at the point now where there's just an unbelievable level of censorship, and we have these giant tech companies who are completely intermeshed with our government. People keep trying to say that they're private companies. No, these are not private companies anymore. I know maybe technically, legally, they're private companies, but this is your government essentially. And there's no gray space.
Wrote 1984. He didn't intend it to be as a blueprint.
Right. But that's where we're at.
Yeah. So anyway, I've got to get going because I've got stuff to take care of, but and also work to get ready for in the morning because I gotta be up at 5. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I recorded for my part, but I'm going to try and see what I can do with editing clips into digestible bite-sized pieces. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I am happy to be part of your live stream or recording. I don't know if you're live streaming this or not, but
thanks for it was a good conversation, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, if we can figure out the bandwidth, I would like to do a live stream or maybe have you on my channel for a live stream, and we can maybe split whatever YouTube gives us out of any super chats. But who knows? But I posted the Kyle Kulinski videos. I started off with like maybe 2 or 3 subscribers. Now I'm probably pushing 300 and just in the last week since I put those videos up. So
a Kyle Kulinski video.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are very popular right now. So,
the Young Turks. So I downloaded Cenk's little rant from YouTube and this is why they've made so many of their videos private that they had up on YouTube, because they know that the cat's out of the bag about who and what they've always been, and they want to stop more people from downloading, but it's too late, kids, because we already downloaded enough to expose you for the trash piles that you have been for years.
Yeah, definitely. They've really destroyed themselves. So
goodbye, Jeffrey Katzenberg. It was nice having you as an investor, but we think you realize just how bad an investment this was, and now you're going to move on. So please take us back.
Yeah.
Please.
Such a world we live in.
We'll have Anna go down on Madeleine Albright if it'll please you.
Yeah, right. Oy.
Practically did. I mean, which is probably why she was so upset with Aaron Matei, because Albright's a rather infamous war criminal, and Matei was like basically doing a story on the subject that she is very supportive of war crimes and war criminals.
Yep, true story. uh, they're pretty obvious about it. Okay, well, anyways, great conversation. Thanks for asking me to do this. That was cool. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, awesome.
All right,
Glad to be
thanks.
on here. Thanks.